After all the work is done, you've finished the project, it's now time to conclude the project. So we're going to talk about how projects get concluded or closed. We're going to talk about what you should review at the end of your project, and we're going to talk about the value of lessons learned. Projects can end in many ways. They can be terminated by integration. Now this is by far the best mechanism or the best way or the standard way that we'd like to end projects. And what we mean by integration is our project is successful, we delivered what we're supposed to deliver, our product is live and ready to go, and now it's part of operations. The next way a project can be terminated is by starvation. Basically means it goes on too long, funding dries up, resources go away, it just starves to death, and the project falls into the wasteland and never gets reopened. The next way it can be by extinction, and what this means is that you're going along doing a project on a particular technology or a particular area, and now all of a sudden a new technology or a new product comes out that makes what your project is all about obsolete. So it would be foolish to continue on that path when there's a better way to do it, a new product or a new approach to do things. So you just let it die and probably create a new project. There's some other ways that can happen. One is politics. If you're doing something from a government standpoint, regardless of what level of government it is, a new government comes in, they may not like that project, so they cancel that project and then set up a different project, maybe, or just cancel it because they don't like it, just a different viewpoint. And then there's events. There's some major events that can happen. For example, we can have floods and hurricanes and viruses that bring about the end of a particular project. Now, all of these things have no reflection on the project manager or the project team. All of the ways that we can conclude a project are not negative. So, for example, if a project starves and it has no funding, it doesn't mean to say that the project team wasn't good. It doesn't mean the project manager wasn't good. These are just ways that projects can actually be terminated. Regardless of how a project actually gets concluded, there's some process that we should go through to make sure that we maximize the value or learn from that particular project. We need to evaluate our methods. We need to evaluate our team performances. We need to recommend improvements for other areas, other departments, other projects that are part of our organization. We need to file our documents, make sure everything's up to date, and we need to close down the actual project. So we need to do an evaluation where we get ideas, and we need to create a lessons learned. And the whole idea of lessons learned is not to punish anybody, but is to have some sort of documented process that allows the organization to learn from some of the things that took place in the previous project. This, in fact, is called Organization Process Assets. That's a project management term for the Project Management Institute body of knowledge. And basically, whenever we learn something about how we run a project, it should form part of this organizational process assets. And then we should ultimately stop the project and let everybody know that the project no longer live and the project is completed. And that's really quite important to make sure that everybody understands that it's now shifted away from being a project to some other entity, hopefully integrated into operations, or in fact it's just closed. Now let's look at some common closeout activities that need to take place when we close down a project, again, regardless of how we close down the project. First of all, we must obtain a client sign-off to make sure that the client is happy with all the things that we delivered, that we're commissioned to deliver. We should identify any outstanding items for an enhanced list or for future projects. We should complete all the project documentation, make sure it's up to date. We should address any outstanding major issues that are there, and we should close out any contracts that are there. Just a couple more activities in the closeout phase. We should conduct a post-implementation review. We should transfer to operational support. We should release staff and physical resources. And we should complete all the project files using a project completion checklist form, which is part of the resources. Let me talk a little bit about the project implementation review. This project implementation review we'll discuss a little bit more the next couple slides. When we talk about transfer to operational support, make sure that operations, whoever's going to take over the project and implement and use the actual product, is they understand what is there and what impact that's going to have on our operations from a staffing standpoint, from a resource standpoint. The interesting thing about releasing staff and the physical resources is if a project is really, really successful and the people are very empowered and very in tune and are very much involved in a particular project, as a project manager, you will notice the following thing. You'll notice as you get closer to the end of the project, you'll notice a level of anxiety in the people that are working on the project. And this is a very natural thing on high-performing projects because people are really empowered, they're really entrenched, they do wonderful things on there, and as they get near the end of the project, they're getting a little anxious about going back to their job. The same old stuff, different day. So that's something to be cognizant of, and it's something as a project manager I encourage you to look at those, find those individuals, and if their performance reviews are really, really good, you might want to consider to bring them over on your next project, because obviously they quite enjoy project work versus the same old job. Let us now turn our attention to review, what we need to review as part of the closeout phase of a project. The post-implementation review is a interesting exercise because what it does is compare reality versus what we were committed, so our plan to what actually happened. It also allows us to identify lessons learned, things that we could learn from this particular project. More importantly, it should help us refine our project management processes and other processes, and also determine what the next steps are. Just to conclude or do a summary, we want to make sure when we do a project closeout that the project is completed. People have signed off on it. We let everybody know project's done. We now focus on operational support phase and follow-up projects. And the post-implementation review of the deliverables of what we've done actually should not be conducted by the project team, by your project team. You should allocate funding for that, and the actual post-implementation review should be done 3 to 6 months after the project is being completed and is now operational. Now the reason for that is it's got to do with learning and adjusting. As a new product or a new service comes into operation in an organization, there's those people that are for it and are very excited about it and people that are against it. So what we do is we allow 3 to 6 months to sort of flatten out the curve, and we sort of get a truer picture of the value or the benefits of that actual project and what it was intended to do. So often a post-implementation review can also be called a benefit realization review, but it should be done by independent, not your project team, but another group of individuals that will assess that based on some criteria that your team would actually produce.